everyone, this is Mindy for My Favorite Things, and today I'm creating a snow flurries background, and I'm going to show you a really great tip for doing some ink blending and adding a lot of contrast. To start my background, I am using the Snowflake Flurry background stamp. So this is a rubber stamp that's already foam mounted. I'm going to just peel off the backing, and then I'm going to use my Misty tool to do my stamping. Since this is already foam mounted, I removed the foam from my Misty, placed the stamp in the stamping positioner, and then picked that up with the door of the Misty. Now for my cardstock, I'm using a light blue cardstock. I added a piece of repositionable adhesive on the back, placed that over my stamp, and then closed the Misty backwards. That way my cardstock is stuck to the bottom of my Misty and it's perfectly placed where I want it. I prepped the cardstock with an anti-static powder tool, and then I'm inking this up in a Versamark ink, which is a clear sticky ink. I am going to stamp this down about 2 to 3 times, mainly because it's really hard to see on the light colored cardstock. But by starting with this colored cardstock, it's going to make ink blending a lot quicker. Now I'm sprinkling on some gold gilded embossing powder. I'll sprinkle it on, and then I kind of tap the cardstock a little bit just to make sure that the embossing powder really gets into those areas, and then tap off the excess. Now once my heat tool is really nice and hot, I go to the back really quick, kind of make a brief pass of the back, and then come to the front and melt that embossing powder. For my ink blending, I'm going to use distress inks today, and I have found I really have kind of refound my love for distress inks by using a blending brush. I'm starting with Salty Ocean, and I'm going to go around the outer edges, leaving the center that light blue. Then I'm going to come in with Blueprint Sketch, but not going in as far towards the center as I did the first time. Just kind of going through the outer edge, kind of a middle point. And then I'm going to come in with Chipped Sapphire. Now this one I just want right around the outer edge, so it's kind of having that nice gradation of color where it gets to the center and it's that nice light blue color. I'm going to buff off that excess ink that sat on top of the embossing with a paper towel, but I decided I wanted a little bit more contrast, so I'm coming in with Black Soot Distress ink, just barely glazing along the edges. Now, if you find you went too far into the center with your colors, you can always take like a white pigment ink and just very carefully go over the center. That'll help brighten that up a little bit. Here I just mixed some Copic white ink with some water, and I'm adding flicks of this to my background, or you could use some white paint. For a focal point for the front of the card, I'm using these stackable snowflakes, and I'm going to die cut those a couple times from some heavy white cardstock. I'm then going to layer these together with some liquid glue. Now the largest snowflake, the one that's going to go on the back, I layered together 3 times. For the medium one, I die cut it from white and then also kind of this white gold glitter cardstock. And then the smallest snowflake that's going to go in the center, I layered together twice. So I put those together and I held it down with something heavy. Now for my card front, I went ahead and added it to an A2 size card base, and I'm holding that together with some Post-it tape. The sentiment I went ahead and stamped off screen. It comes from the Coolest Friends stamp set. I just stamped it in black ink onto white cardstock and trimmed that down. So I'm adding my layered snowflake to the center with that liquid glue, kind of lining that up as centered as I can, and then I'll set something heavy on that and let that sit for a couple minutes. The sentiment I layered up with some strips of white cardstock to pop that up, and then added that to the front as well with that liquid glue. Now, one of the reasons I added the sentiment towards the bottom is I love adding jewels and gems to the center of snowflakes. So that is why my sentiment is towards the bottom of the card. I then just added the jewel in the center and then a couple off to each side. And that's going to finish off my card project. So it is a big helpful tip to be able to start with a colored cardstock and then use kind of those same shades or going darker to create that gradation from the edges, working your way in. And that lighter area in the center really draws your attention to the focal point, which is my layered snowflake. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thanks so much for joining.